was a fun thing for all of us boys to take out of the freezer and thaw out and play with it, you know. And then we got tired of playing with it. Then we'd put it back in the freezer, you know, and we'd freeze it again. And after about a year and a half of this, we decided we needed a new bravery test. So we thought, what can we do? I think we should boil and eat boil and eat the iguana. That would be the ultimate bravery test. Well, we put it in a pot. We got the biggest pot my mom had, and we stuffed it in there and boiled it, you know. Well, it's been boiling about 5 minutes. Probably done by now. You know. And we got the thing out of it. Honest to goodness, we ate some of that lizard.
Oh my god.
I even ate some. And they even ate them. And
what did it taste like?
You know, at that point, it actually tasted kind of like sawdust.
Doug did all the bravery tests he made his brothers do. He was right in there with them. But they were on their own when it came to one of Doug's long-running babysitting pranks. I spoke with Doug and with his youngest brother, Mike, who was the easiest target. They're 10 years apart.
We were convinced for 3 or 4 years of our lives, I think, that he could actually turn into a werewolf. We would walk out of the house, and then you'd hear this, and it would literally stop you in your tracks. And you just knew he was out there somewhere.
Again, here's Doug.
We had a pasture in the back, and it was about maybe half an acre. And they'd go out clear to the back fence, and that's where they like to sleep out. So this is the perfect place for me to stalk them in the night, you know, and sneak up and be the werewolf. So I would kind of just crawl out into the shadows, you know, and I could hear them out there talking, and I'd be sneaking up to the bushes, and I'd go, "Roo!" And I'd hear dead silence. And then I'd hear one of them go, "Doug's a werewolf."
Doug kept this up for years, and the kids began to dread it whenever their parents went out, knowing something scary would happen to them. Until finally, it all came to a head one night. Mike was 8 years old, the middle brothers were 11 and 13, Doug was 18. It began the way it usually did, out in a pasture, surrounded by potato fields. Here's Doug.
We had a full moon, which was wonderful. And I kind of got to where the moon was silhouetting me, and they couldn't really see me, and I stuck a bunch of weeds down in my glasses so they're poking out all around, you know, and then I kind of rose up out of the weed patch, you know, and they could see the silhouette with all this looked like hair poking out, you know, so that convinced them. I mean, I was totally growing hair. I was completely a werewolf, so run for your life, you know.
And we all, of course, knew that the best thing to do was to get out of our sleeping bags and run as fast as we could to the house, because that was the sure shelter.
What were you afraid that Doug was going to do to you?
Well, it's just the whole idea of being chased around in the dark, and it's not like there was ever a lack of physical contact. I mean, he literally was a situation where you were scared for your life. And we knew that Doug was in between us and the house somewhere. And as we were running to the house, Doug was just sitting on the roof in a sort of gargoyle position, just as still as the night, and just staring at us, watching us. And so we just kind of slowly just walked underneath him and ran into the house.
Well, now I'm peeking in the windows, I'm rattling the doors more, I'm trying to get in, and they're running from door to door trying to lock all the doors up, and I was always right on their heels as they made it to the door, and I made sure that I just didn't quite catch them, you know, and they would run in and slam the doors. Just at about the time they thought they were all safe, I snuck over and took the breaker, and I shut the breaker off to the house.
And then all of a sudden, boom, the lights go out. And it's pitch dark in the house.
It was like we're all gonna die. I mean, it was just that they had no safe place they could think of to go until one of them finally thought, get to the car. You know, we gotta get in the car and lock the doors.
And as we were all sitting there looking around at each other, we realized that my brother Steve didn't make it out of the house.
And then the next thing I know, I'm in the house alone.
Let's introduce another brother. This is Steve.
And of course, then my fear went out, you know, through the roof, you know, like.
Yeah.
Then I see him look in patio window at me.
Well, I was still around back, so I thought, well, Steve is still in there. I could see in the darkness, I could see him rocking in the chair. Well, I'll get Steve.
He snuck into the house, and he saw my brother Steve just sitting on the couch. And Steve just said, I don't care. Kill me if you want.
And that was when I told him, you know, just kill me or whatever. Be done with this, however you want to end it. I'm done.
I don't think we ever played it again after that point, you know?
These days, the brothers are all quick to say that Doug was playing werewolf, that it was just a game. None of them carry resentment towards him. Though when they were kids, clearly feelings were running a bit hotter. Around the same time that Doug had his little siblings convinced he wanted their blood, he got into a motorcycle accident that nearly killed him. He broke every bone in his face, one arm, and one irreplaceable kneecap. The force of the crash made the helmet, along with his scalp, shoot off his head. It took around 350 stitches to sew him back up.
You know, when I came home from the hospital, I had my leg in a cast, my arm in a cast, I was in a wheelchair. My face was all banged up, and that my brothers say, Mom, we'll take Doug down the road in his wheelchair for a walk, and so he can have some air. And so she goes, okay, and I get in the wheelchair, and they get me out on the highway and run as fast as they can, and then let go. And I'm like, you know, going down the road in the wheelchair, heading for the ditch. Just about the time I go in the ditch, they catch up to me and straighten me out and go again, you know. So this was kind of a get even with me kind of a time, and there was nothing I could do about it, and they had a great fun with me that time, you know. So I guess that you know, I was expecting a lot of sympathy and poor Doug, and no, it wasn't that at all. It was, let's get some revenge for all this time.
Revenge came in other forms as he got older. When Doug had kids of his own, to his horror, his oldest son Corey turned out to be exactly the same kind of babysitter that Doug had been. Doug would come home from a night out and find himself pulling Corey aside and saying things like, next time, try and tie the rope a little looser around your brother's neck. As an adult, Doug has gone to each of his younger brothers and apologized for how he treated them. But he also thinks if they'd been less aggressive with each other as kids, they wouldn't be as close now.
I know families that have grown up more mellow than us, and they get along fine, and they're very civil, and they're very happy to see each other. But they're almost like, when they see each other, they shake hands, and I'm like, give me a break. You haven't seen your brother for 6 months, and you're shaking his hand. I mean, we're grabbing each other and bear hugging, and we're jumping up and down, and you know, it's a whole different relationship as far as I see. Like people who've been through traumatic experiences together, you know. Maybe that's why, you know, you feel like you've been through that and survived it all together, and so it creates a deep bond or something, maybe. So I think we're closer because of it, actually.
Did part of you know that when you were younger, that it might make you closer when you grew up?
Well, you know, I think maybe subconsciously you do, because after every time you would feel somewhat closer, you know. So I don't think as a kid you actually sit down and think, if I do this, it's going to make me closer to my brother. You just do it if it feels that way. You know, you just tend to do the things that make you grow closer together, and those are the things that we did that drew us together, so we continued doing those kind of things. When I asked the other brothers if they'd do it all over again, they all
all say they would.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved my childhood.
Even with all the terror and danger that was there, you would still do all of it over again?
Absolutely. I look back on those years with complete fondness. Billy Frank writes books and makes podcasts. Most recently, a funny, dark, fictional show about middle school called Here Lies Me.
If you want this choice position, have a chin in this position. Rosy cheeks. You must be kind, you must be
Airport here in Chicago. Susan Burton was one of those kids, now old enough to tell the tale. She and her sister Betsy were traveling from Colorado